Hey guys, it's Miss Gregory, and now you can see the later video, part 4, is being posted. Alright, so we're still on integers in chapter 5 of the workbook. We're still focusing on the same standards for number sense, 5, 6, 7, and 8. We are now to the coordinate plane quadrants section. So make sure you have your supplies, which includes your workbook, so you can write down some notes, try the guidance, and at the end do the guided practice. This is for lesson 5.6. Make sure you have your supply. Okay, so we're going to go over lesson 5.6 and then 5.7. 5.7 actually has a lot of the same information, so there's only a tiny bit of that. 5.6 has most of the new information. Okay, so we're going to focus on information with the coordinate plane first in 5.6, and you can see the two standards that we are covering. The second one in blue is talking about reflections, and that will be later on. So let's go ahead. You've got your book. Let's get ready. We are in your workbook on page 395. This is your turn to actually read through the real world link and answer questions 1 through 4 regarding the coordinate grid that you see on the page. Try to answer the questions and then come back after you've done that and check to see if your answers are correct. Okay, now that you're back and you have checked your answers, make sure you have the correct answers copied down before you move on. If you still have questions about these, we will talk about them in class when I check your work. Otherwise, when you're ready, we're going to move on to the next slide, which has a lot of information already written down that you need to add to your workbook. We are in the workbook on page 396, and as a reminder, you must know the Roman numerals for the quadrants. So I've listed 1, 2, 3, and 4 so that you can remember this. Okay, you must be able to recognize and write the Roman numerals. Okay, the vocabulary for quadrants is there, but basically it's where the x-axis and the y-axis meet and form a coordinate plane, where the 2 points meet in the middle is called the origin, and they meet at 0, 0. The x-axis is the horizontal line, which is going across from left to right. The y-axis is the vertical line, which is going up and down. And you need to remember, as you are plotting points, that x comes before y, which means you are going to crawl across before you walk. Okay, you have to be able to identify points, write the ordered pairs for them. You have to be able to plot ordered pairs on the coordinate plane, and you have to be able to describe and identify what quadrant they are in. So the chart that is pointed to here, it says important underneath, helps you identify the quadrants. The integers in quadrant 1, both of them are positive, and there's an example in the chart. For quadrant 2, the x is negative, then the y is positive. For quadrant 3, both integers are negative. And for quadrant 4, the x is positive, but the y is negative. So if you're moving below the x-axis, you're moving down into the negative numbers. If you're moving up above the x-axis, you're in the positive numbers. Now you've already plotted points in quadrant 1, but all you've worked in up until this point is quadrant 1. Now you also need to know quadrants 2, 3, and 4 because now you know the negative numbers. Okay, so make sure that you can label a coordinate plane. When you get one on a quiz or test, and even some of the homework problems that we do, you're not going to have the quadrants already labeled for you. You're going to have to know where does quadrant 1 belong and start labeling 2, 3, and 4 after that. Okay, go ahead and look at example 1. The directions say identify the ordered pair that names point C. So you need to find point C, which happens to be in quadrant 1, which is another part of your directions, is to identify the quadrant point C is located in. So you are in quadrant 1, and again, starting at the origin, which is 0, 0, you would move to the right in the positive direction moving across, and then you would have to move up in the positive direction for the y to get C. You can tell in step 1 they've located that C going across to the right is at 1.5. That's the x coordinate along the x-axis. And for step 2, moving up the y-axis, you are at coordinate 1. Okay, so notice how again ordered pairs we talked about, you have to have the parentheses and the numbers are separated by a comma. Now that we've worked with rational numbers, you know that they may be other than just whole numbers. They could be fractions, they could be mixed numbers, they could be decimals that you are having to plot on the coordinate plane. Okay, example 2 says identify the point, and you can see it's -1.5 and -1. So this time they've given you the ordered pair. Now you have to identify where it's located. Okay, just the opposite of what we did in example 1. So if you start at the origin, you would need to move to the left to go -1.5, and you would need to move down to go to -1. Moving to the left and moving down would put us in quadrant 3. Also knowing that both of the points are negative, I know I'm in quadrant 3. Okay, please notice that off to the side, the ordered pair piece of tape, that is something important to remember, and we're actually going to discuss this in class. When you sometimes have a x or y coordinate, that is a 0, and the point actually lies on the x-axis or the y-axis. We'll do those in class to help you out. So pause here if you need to copy any of the notes before you move on. Alright, now flip in your workbook to page 397, and we're going to take a few notes. I'm using the notebook paper for the lines. You can of course use the work zone where you've got the margin to write some extra notes. I want you, of course, if you look at the very bottom of this screen, it's reminding you to do the got it's A through E, and we'll go over the answers in class. A and B you can already do the got it for because it's identifying the ordered pairs and the quadrants. Now, the new section on page 397 is talking about reflections on the coordinate plane, and here's an easy way to help you out with this so it doesn't look like exactly what you see in the book. This is another way to help you. If you think about a reflection like when you look in the mirror, if you think there's actually a thing called mirror twins, which means they're looking at their opposite. If one twin is left-handed, the other one is right-handed. So think of looking into a mirror at your reflection and seeing the opposite. So when you're being asked to reflect over the x-axis, that means you're moving up and down or from top to bottom, bottom to top. And think about a reflection as flipping it over that line. When you are reflecting over the y-axis, that means you're moving left to right or right to left. And again, think of that as a flip. Okay, so look at the examples on page 397. They're really pretty easy, and you can try the guide at C, D, and E, trying to name the reflection and using the coordinate plane that's on the page. Once you've copied the information, then you may move on. If you need to, pause the video now. Okay, and now we're on page 398. There is an example for at the top that you should look at and do the guided F, and then you'll be ready for the guided practice on page 398. I want you to stop and do this before you move on with the last part of the video that goes into just a little bit of 5.7. So if you stop here and pause, I want you to do numbers 1 through 4. And rate yourself how well you understand this information before you continue watching the video to get a little bit of info from lesson 5.7. Again, they kind of repeat the same message about coordinate planes and reflection, so they're pretty easy. All right, try it on your own and then come back. We will check the answers for the guided practice in class. Alright, so now we are looking at lesson 5.7. We are on page 403. Again, not much longer in the video because it's very similar information, but this is a part I want you to stop and do on your own. Do the real world link, numbers 1 through 6, and again, you're answering questions by looking at the map or the coordinate grid that you see with the soccer field and the tree. So pause the video now, answer the questions, and then come back and check your answer. Okay, check your answers. I filled it in purple. Hopefully you did these correctly. Check to see. If not, write the correct answer and pause and make sure you have all the information before you move to the next slide. Pause if you need to, otherwise we are moving on. Okay, these are just a few little notes that you need from lesson 5.7. These cover pages 404 through 406. You can write down any of the information directly into your workbook. They are easy and it's information we've kind of covered already. So read through the examples, which are examples 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Do the guidance, which are letters A through G. You're going to be graphing and labeling points on the coordinate plane, which should be pretty easy for you already. And then it does ask you about a reflection. So again, very similar types of questions. So do all the way through page 406. Goes to example 5, and that also has the last got it question, which is letter G. And then when you are ready, we're going to do the guided practice on page 406. This is really just one question, and then we will go over the guided practice for both lessons 5.6 and 5.7 in class tomorrow. Okay? So make sure you have this information and you try it on your own. And this is the last slide, so we will see you in class. Bye now, Miss Gregory.